We're joined today by Julia Fullerton-Batten. She's a fine art photographer who has an amazing cinematic style. We go behind the scenes to see how she figures out what she works on and how she accomplishes it.
I'm really interested in your process, your, approach to lighting. But first of all, I always like to ask this one question. In terms of what drives you as a photographer, what is that? What gets you out of bed and gets you to create these amazing images?
Do you know what? I just love taking pictures. I just love having a camera, creating something that is in my head.
Yeah.
And then I tend to set everything up. So everything is nearly pretty much staged. Now and then I did a project on the lockdown that was existing and photographing people through their windows. But a lot of it is staged. It's what I see in my head. And I spend a long time producing it, setting it up, creating it in my head.
Yeah.
And then the production. And I'm so excited because some of it takes such a long time, that I'm so excited when I actually do manage to get the camera out and take the picture as I see it in my head. And that's what totally excites me.
That's pretty amazing. So it really, we talk about visualization as the starting point. Ansel Adams wrote about visualization over and over again, various different photographers, Edward Weston, how important it is to pre-visualize or visualize an image. And you exemplify that. Obviously, you have to have totally pre-visualized this. And I'm going to ask you, maybe the best thing for us to do is just to dive in, and I'll have plenty of questions as we're looking through here. So,
you know what, Mark? If I could paint, I think I would be a painter, but I can't paint.
But
I just could never. I could do little stick men, so I decided to do photography in the end.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I can see that quality in your work. I mean, this one that we're looking at, we were looking at a moment ago here, of the woman lying, in the creek with the flowers. I mean, that looks like a painting, could be a painting. But I'm going to jump over to
and that one is actually copying a painting.
I
Yeah.
so. I kind of recognize it. Is it well? Here's, I've got your screen up with the beach scene at the London Bridge. Maybe you could just tell us about this. And I know you have a series that's going to show us like how you developed this image. I'm really curious about that.
So I was doing a project. It only completed about a year ago, and the project itself lasted for about 3 years.
Yeah.
It was a project about the River Thames. And when I was looking into the history of the river, I realized that this is an area of London by the Tower Bridge that's very, very famous.
Yes.
But this is now closed, completely closed off to the public. You can't even go down there unless it's once a year. And when people go mudlarking, they open it once a year, and people can go mudlarking at low tide, which means they can go on the foreshore and look for artifacts, and you can find 100-year-old coins, and it's really, really fascinating.
That's called mudlarking?
Mudlarking.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Never heard of that.
But this area, so in the kind of from 1934 to about 1971, people obviously weren't traveling that much then as they are now.
Right.
And people used to go at low tide down to the foreshore to sunbathe and swim and hang out on the beach. And they did actually import sand to this area on the foreshore, so people were able to do this.
So it would have actually looked like this scene? This is amazing. I had no idea. It would actually be a beach scene like this?
Yes, yeah, so
wow.
I found this. Let me click to the next image if I can. That's because I've got some historical references, which are original paintings from Getty Images, original photographs, that inspired me to do this photo shoot. And I just thought it was such an interesting thing that happened that you just don't see. You don't see people hanging out in the river. I mean, people do swim in the river now and then, but that's quite unusual. But to be able to go there in front of this really iconic bridge and and sunbathe and hang out, I just thought was so interesting that I thought I had to recreate this story. So this is how I sometimes get my ideas.
Uh-huh.
Kind of, I see something and research it, and then I take references from paintings or photographs that exist, and then I recreate it how I see it. But I take references from, for example, the costumes, and I mean, I love vintage kind of swimwear anyway. So I was very excited to discover these images and then to kind of recreate it how I saw it.
This is amazing. Now, how long would it take you to move from that kind of discovery process where you're looking and something is inspiring you to where you actually have the finished photograph? What kind of time span are we looking at?
Well, that's a little bit like how long is a piece of string, because often I have to get the idea in my head to begin with, and then I have to sit on that idea before I actually start really concentrating and start working on it and researching. So it kind of depends on your question. If you were to involve the research stage or the production stage. With
this photograph, what was the research part? Like, how long did that take?
Because I'm also a commercial photographer, so I'm dipping in and out the whole time.
Right. Okay.
So I get sidetracked shooting my commissions, which come up now and then I go back to producing this image, for example.
Right.
So it's really hard. It's really hard to answer that question, to be honest.
Okay.
But the production side, after I've really thought about what I want to create, I had to then get permission from the London Port Authority to actually go, and for them to open the gates for me to actually go and photograph this from this angle.
Right.
And in itself takes a few weeks to get that approval. And then they set a date where I can go, and I'm shooting the background. And then in the meantime, I'm finding my models, my actors, and then I'm working closely with the stylist who will be putting all the costumes together, and I'm doing it as well because I'm a little bit obsessed with that.
Okay.
And then looking for props. And normally I try and shoot everything in camera, but I couldn't put 50 odd people in front of the Tower Bridge. They only gave me access for about half an hour to go and photograph there. And in fact, the first time I went there, I wasn't very happy with the sunlight. I wanted it to be quite a sunny day, but a little bit diffused. So I didn't want that really extreme, bright, hard shadow, which I got, but at a slightly diffused look.
Right.
So once I had my background, I then spent 3-4 days and had to build a huge sand pit in a huge studio and creating sunlight, as you probably know, is quite hard.
In a studio, yes. Could you go back? Could you bring that image back up so as you're talking about it, we can see the finish? There we go. So this was created in studio where the people are.
Yes, and it was really important that they're standing on sand so that their feet can integrate into the real sand.
Yes.
Because if their feet are just on the concrete surface, it wouldn't feel like they're actually in the sand.
Yeah.
And then I spent sort of 3 days. I spent a day lighting it with my crew, with my assistants, and then we spent 2 days shooting all the various people. So the shoot itself took 3 days.
Okay.
Plus the background, which took two days because I went back. And then the research took maybe on and off 3-4 months.
Okay.
Really on and off. It's not me concentrating on it non-stop.
So
that's why
it's a fairly long-term project, really.
Yeah. Yeah. But the whole Old Father Thames project took 3 years because there's about 15, probably 17 images in total. And some of them are quite elaborate setups. This was one of the more elaborate setups.
I see, yeah. Well, that's something I've been talking a lot about, the value of having long-term projects as opposed to just, individual images. It really develops your photography, and it causes you to think in terms of the end result of where you're going with those images rather than just one at a time.
And you know what? I really enjoy projects because you can really dig deep into the
Yeah.
project. You can really focus on it. And normally a project takes me probably about a year. But because the River Thames has so many, this project could be endless, and I might keep adding an image to it in the future because the only thing that's combining the project is actually just the river.
Right.
So it's very long, open-ended project in a way because it could just go on forever and ever.
We hope that you enjoyed that video. If you did, please give it a like and leave a comment. We love to hear from you. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so that you can know when all of our future videos come out. And finally, be sure to get out there and capture your own images of life.